The Ukrainian International Airlines plane has crashed after taking off from Tehran, killing all 176 people on board. Most of the victims were from Iran and Canada. Iranian authorities say they've recovered the aircraft's black boxes, but won't be releasing them to the US or to the plane's manufacturer, Boeing. Several airlines are avoiding Iranian airspace because of the military clashes between Iran and the US. Here's our transport correspondent, Tom Burridge.
Devastation minutes after takeoff. Later, bodies of those on the Ukrainian Airlines flight were taken away. There were no survivors. Most of those killed were Iranian or Canadian. British nationals Sam Zukeyi and Mohammad Reza Kadkodezadeh were on board. So were Saeed Tahmasebi and his wife Nilafar, who recently got married in Tehran. Tonight, one report quoted a Canadian intelligence official saying initial evidence suggested the plane was not brought down by a missile and may have suffered a technical malfunction. Ukrainian Airlines said the airliner was only 3 years old and was serviced 2 days ago. At an emotional press conference, the airline's technical director said the plane was one of their best. The plane left the Iranian capital Tehran early this morning. It was bound for the Ukrainian capital Kiev. Data published online shows the plane crashed minutes after takeoff. The Boeing 737 steadily climbed some 4,500 feet. Takeoff initially appeared normal. Then the plane suddenly disappears from radar. That suggests there was a type of catastrophic incident. There was an initial suggestion from a Ukrainian official of an engine failure. But if an engine fails, a Boeing 737 should be able to keep flying. Pilots train regularly for that scenario. Crucial to establishing the cause of this crash will be the aircraft's flight data and cockpit voice recorders. The Iranian authorities have them. Protocol dictates that they will lead this investigation. It's claimed this video shows the plane. If genuine, it seems to be on fire. There's a flash before the impact.
If there'd been an engine failure, just one of the two engines on board the aeroplane, it would still be capable of climbing, and therefore it'd be capable of returning to the airfield and, if necessary, abandoning the approach, climbing away again, coming back around for a second approach. So there should be no reason why the aeroplane fell out of the sky as it did.
Airlines have rerouted flights away from Iranian and Iraqi airspace following Iran's missile strikes on US bases. Because the plane was made by Boeing, the Americans should have a role in the investigation. But the animosity between Washington and Tehran will make that hard. Tom Burridge, BBC News.
President Trump claims Iran appears to be backing away from conflict with the US, even as Iran's supreme leader warns the strikes on US bases in Iraq were not enough. Mr. Trump said no US or Iraqi lives were lost in the attacks last night. But the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff says in his assessment the strikes were meant to kill US personnel. Iran was retaliating for the US blowing up its top military commander, General Soleimani. Our Middle East editor, Jeremy Bone, reports from Iraq.
The Iranians kept their promise and may have bought some time. Iran had to calibrate its missile launchers. Enough to satisfy angry Iranians, not enough to provoke a much more destructive American response. They seem to have guessed right. Iraqi soldiers shouted warnings to each other. They shared the huge Ain al-Assad base in western Iraq with the Americans. Afterwards, for the leaders, came a chance to save face, claim victory, and step back for the moment.
No Americans were harmed in last night's attack by the Iranian regime. We suffered no casualties. All of our soldiers are safe. Iran appears to be standing down, which is a good thing for all parties concerned and a very good thing for the world.
It looked different in Iran. A few in Tehran even got up early to celebrate revenge. Here's Zahra Jaspi, a university student. I have a great feeling, she said. I hope revenge continues and I hope to see Trump fail. And later, the regime's faithful chanted death to America as the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, told them he hadn't finished yet.
The
issue of revenge is something else. What happened last night was just a slap in the face.
For him, the assassination promotes unity in a divided country. And now Iran has more time for its speciality, unconventional warfare using proxies and allies. Here in Baghdad, the morning had nothing for Iraqis who want Iranians and Americans to leave them alone. The Badr organization, a political party based on a pro-Iranian militia, gathered to mourn the assassinations and condemn the US refusal to pull their troops out of Iraq.
They insist on their presence in Iraq. That means they forced everybody in Iraq to go for resistance, for military resistance against them.
Do you think now that the Iranians have made this attack that it's the end of this chapter?
They do more, and they increase, I think. This is only, I think it's a message, not more.
A message to the Americans saying?
It's a message that we are serious.
This is a long-term conflict, the biggest danger at the moment in the most unstable part of the world. Without a political dialogue and some kind of deal, the slide towards war will continue. Jeremy Bowen, BBC News, Baghdad.
Well, President Trump said today the US would impose more sanctions on Iran. Mr. Trump is no fan of the 2015 deal aimed at stopping Iran from building a nuclear bomb, and he pulled the US out of the agreement in 2018. Our North America correspondent Nick Bryant reports from Washington.
From the President of the United States, an almost celestial entrance. His military chief standing at his shoulder, a core belief of the Trump doctrine on his teleprompter.
As long as I'm President of the United States, Iran will never be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. Good morning.
Though flanked by his generals, he's decided not to respond militarily to Iran's attacks. He's opted for more economic sanctions against Tehran, a de-escalation. And there was a call, too, for America's European allies, including Britain, to finally abandon the Iranian nuclear deal negotiated by the Obama administration.
They must now break away from the remnants of the Iran deal, or JCPOA. And we must all work together toward making a deal with Iran that makes the world a safer and more peaceful place.
Perfect. Christmas 2018. And a surprise visit from Donald Trump to the Al-Assad air base in western Iraq, one of the targets for last night's Iranian attack. The Pentagon received what one official called multiple hours warning from satellites and communication intercepts. Plenty of time for troops to take shelter in bunkers. They're playing down reports of getting a tip-off from the Iraqi government and that Iran was deliberately trying to miss. In the Oval Office 24 hours ago, the president was threatening strong US military retaliation for any Iranian attack.
If Iran does anything that they shouldn't be doing, they're going to be suffering the consequences, and very strongly.
But in the White House Situation Room last night, facing perhaps his biggest test as Commander-in-Chief, he opted for circumspection. Amidst public indications from Iranian officials, they wanted to call it quits. For now, the Trump White House can present this as a foreign policy victory, dramatically weakening the Iranian regime by assassinating its second most powerful figure, without embroiling US forces in another protracted Middle East conflict. Nick Bryant, BBC News, Washington.
And for more on the unfolding tensions between the US and Iran, I spoke earlier with Barbara Slavin of the Atlantic Council. Thanks for being with us, Barbara. So President Trump is saying that Iran appears to be standing down, while Iran's supreme leader seems to be saying something very different. Is this a de-escalation?
I think it's a pause. You know, I was thinking of the period in World War II before
the hostilities actually began, the phony war, they called it. I think we're in a phony war right now. It's not over. As long as the United States maintains what it calls a maximum pressure campaign against Iran, Iran will find ways to retaliate.
And Iran's supreme leader said very clearly that he wants American troops out of the Middle East. Do you think American troops are going to be targeted now, maybe via proxies?
Well, I think we've already seen the Iraqi parliament vote to expel the Americans. And I think the American presence, frankly, the NATO presence in Iraq has become untenable. As long as the United States and Iran are in this confrontation, Iraq is caught in the middle. It will not be safe for, not just for American servicemen, but for diplomats, business people, tourists, others. So one way or another, this has to be resolved, or yes, the Americans will have to leave.
But how do you see it being resolved? President Trump talked today about new sanctions against Iran, but also seemed to open up a window for those who embrace a path towards peace.
I've been searching for a strategy behind this maximum pressure campaign ever since it began. I still don't see it. I don't know what the goal is of these policies that the U.S. has espoused toward Iran. Is it regime change? Is it capitulation? Is it a new nuclear deal? Is it an end to Iranian interference in other countries? What is the goal? Until we know what the goal is, there's no way we can gauge whether there's any plausible path for getting there.
Well, President Trump did say today that he wants a new and better deal with Iran. Is this possible at this point?
He says he doesn't want Iran to have nuclear weapons. Iran says it doesn't want to have nuclear weapons. It agreed to a deal in 2015 that gave verifiable assurances that it could not build nuclear weapons, at least until the year 2030. So I just frankly don't see that Donald Trump is going to get a better deal after everything he has done, after everything he has put the people of Iran through.
You have written about the cult of martyrdom in Iran. Is Soleimani now a martyr who is helpful to the Iranian leadership?
Very much so. You know, just a month ago, there were Iranians in the streets protesting their own government. Now we saw 1 million of them in the streets of Tehran embracing Qasem Soleimani as a national hero. You have seen pictures of him on social media being embraced by the Imam Hussein, who is the great martyr in Shia Islam. He was killed by the evil Caliph Yazid in the 7th century. And the United States has become Yazid for religious Shia, including those in Iran and many other parts of the Middle East.
Barbara Slavin, thanks for being with us.
You're quite welcome.
And one more note from Iraq tonight. Several rockets have landed in Baghdad's green zone. Eyewitnesses heard sirens in the heavily fortified area of the city, home to the US Embassy in Iraq. The Iraqi military confirmed details of the incident, adding that they're not aware of any casualties.